Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together.
Hey guys, what's up? Amir Reiter here with the Transform Sales Podcast. I got my guest, Ryan Lallier, founder of SalesGevity. Love the name.
Thank you.
And it's been quite some time since we saw each other. I think that you and I met back in COVID when I was in Miami, and I think you were just getting into the outsourced sales industry back then. And I feel like time flies because here we are having a podcast talking about mistakes that buyers make. And I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of mistakes that they have made over the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. For anybody watching, it's not snowing where Ryan is. I was confused too. It's just a white fence that happens to be at the right line to look like you got some snow going on. But thank you for chiming in. Just to kind of chime in who's listening on the show. Sometimes we have sales agencies that are getting familiar with their other colleagues in the industry, but other times there are first-time buyers of outsourced sales services, and sometimes buyers that have done it and said that they were victims and they lost all their money, but they're back at it because they need revenue, and they're not victims of their huge billion-dollar companies as much as they say they are. And what we hope to achieve in this episode is transparency, talking about the mistakes. Yeah. And hopefully buyers that are listening can avoid those mistakes. Those mistakes are costly for them, for their pipeline, for the AEs, and for the amazing agencies that perform for them. But before I get into that, love to hear a little bit about how you got into the lovely business of outsourced sales to begin with. What brought you here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Well, hey, Amir, thanks a lot for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it. I've been following you for probably 5-6 years now. So love the content, love all the work you guys are doing over at CloudTask, and I appreciate this opportunity. How did I get into this? Well, I kind of fell into the outsource piece because when I quit my job back in 2019, I had this vision of building an app. I wanted to build Teledoc for salespeople. I wanted to provide the opportunity and the option for at any moment, at any time, a sales rep, SDR, BDR, enterprise rep, manager could click a button on their phone and talk to a live sales coach. The medium or the MVP, the minimum viable product that I came up with was to just have it on Slack. So I signed up like 35, 40 people like quick in the month of January of 2020. And most of those folks were AEs and SDRs. As we all know, what happened in February 2020 and March and April, the world changed a bit. A lot of those SDRs and AEs, they lost their jobs. Therefore, they could no longer pay me $39 a month to talk to my buddies in Slack channels and get support. So
they were catching out to buy Bitcoin.
I don't know what they were doing at that point. I think half were panicking and half were probably going off to start outsourced BDR businesses. I don't know. But yeah, so at that point, I was like, what am I going to do? Do I go try to get a job in the middle of the pandemic, or do I just pivot and try something new? So I went into CrowdCast, started teaching classes, and I picked up some consulting gigs. So I just started helping like early stage founders build out a go-to-market playbook for outbound. Those conversations turned into them asking me, do I know of anybody who does outsourced BDR work or outsourced business development? And I said, I do, I'll do it. So at 42, threw on the headset, started building lists, making cold calls, and I became the first BDR at SalesGevity. And then from there, I just scaled the business. Just kind of started to snowball. We started getting more and more customers, learning more, pivoting, buying tech, kind of get involved in the scene. And then if you fast forward to 4 years later, we're still standing. Fortunately, we're still standing, and we're a business development as a service.
Standing strong, if I had to add to it.
Thanks, man.
Typically, I get into problems. I'm going to do a little bit of backwards. I kind of want to get into first, like really understanding the industries and companies that you help the best. And like, let's not go broad. Let's talk about the 80-20 rule, right? The where 80% of your revenue comes from, meaning that you probably crush it for them. Talk to me about that. What industries are you focusing in? Is it software? Is it services? Is it even more specific than that? What are you focused on?
That's a great question. So when we started, we took every piece of business we could get because we didn't know anything and we just wanted to get revenue, right? At least that was my approach. As we, grew up a little bit and matured, there was some sophistication within the companies that were coming to us. So, we did work with a number of, crypto security firms, which offered us the opportunity to call this on some very complex individuals in risk management, in financial services and banks and such. Your legacy MarTech, HR tech, those companies always exist. They always need help. the way that we kind of pick and choose who we work with is not really industry as much as it is maturity. Is the team mature enough to understand that we are a third party, we're an outside vendor, and are they mature enough to work with us in the SLA style fashion so that we can actually work in a harmonious way as a team, right?
So let me pause that. So Web 3.0 is an industry that you guys do well in. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Okay. And then aside from Web 3.0, you look for organizations that are at a specific maturity. Is that headcount size? Is that revenue? Is that type of funding? Is it a combination of both? What
I mean, what I look for is the team. Who am I working with? Is it just founder and me? Is it aligned with the marketing leader, some folks in CS, a couple of AEs that we're going to be supporting? Like how much investment from the team that we're working for are they going to put in, or is it just going to be us on an island?
It's less about revenue size, headcount. It's more about almost company culture, who you're working with, what their understanding is of outsourced sales or sales in general. Like to tell, hey, I'll get a partner that's going to support me to get through that hump, or it's kind of like you're almost creating the POC as much as, which makes sense to me, by the way. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a mixed bag. There are some mature organizations that have 6, 7 enterprise AEs in a company that's been around for 15, 20 years. They bring us in to support the AEs because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and those reps need meetings. We'll take that opportunity as long as the team is mature enough. The tech is cool. We obviously want good product market fit. We don't want to sell junk or push products and services that we're just not going to have success with. We're at the point now as a business where we actually get to turn down opportunities. 3 years ago, I
really start growing, and congratulations on that. That's like the magical thing when you start saying no.
Yeah,
that's when things get fun.
I think so. Yeah, definitely, and you can kind of control the bandwidth too, and try to provide a quality service.
So you threw out some titles too. Like is there something in particular you like working with? Do you like working with CEOs of founder companies? Do you like working with marketing leaders, sales leaders? Talk to me a little bit about those personas, because you mentioned them right in the beginning. I caught that super fast. But anything that is in particular a preference, or something you work well with?
Yeah, I mean, title wise, we used to love CFOs, and we still do, but we all know that the shift to call on the CFO, because all roads lead to the CFO, is very popular now. Everyone's calling on the CFO. I mean, I literally got an email back from a CFO yesterday saying I get 10 of these a day. I'm like, you get 10 emails like this a day of selling this type of product or service to you? But the point being, they're getting hit pretty hard right now. So gotta love the finance folks. Maybe take it a tier down, VP finance, controllers, kind of people who are in the weeds looking to make change, inject change, go back to their CFO and say, hey, I have a chance to be a hero. But all the legacy titles still remain the same. I love selling to sales leaders. The higher up, the better. I think they have more of a macro view when you're at a CRO level of the business, and they kind of get it. VPs of sales can be a little bit prickly when you try to reach out and sell them enablement tech software.
They're us when we're not here.
Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what sets your agency apart from other sales agencies when it comes to serving your ideal customer.
I mean, we're US based, so everyone on the team is here. Whether that's a pro or con or an advantage, the customer will have to decide, but that's who we are. Our methodology is research-based, slow, deliberate. We're boutique in a sense. Like, we're not trying to scale and get a bunch of BDRs in here and take on a huge land grab. We typically work with anywhere from 4 to 6 customers simultaneously, and we never go outside that. I'm comfortable running a business that small, controlled, because it allows us to offer really good product to the customer.
I think it's smart. I think one of the biggest learnings I can ever give a leader from scaling to 265 SDRs when we were a service company would be to stay small, pick your customers. So that all makes sense to me. And it makes a lot of sense too when you tie it together to CFOs being a good call point for you, because US based, right? High quality CFOs are not going to really put up with anything less than that, right? So that definitely aligns up. So essentially, to recap, right? You're looking for companies that have US that look for quality calling, small boutique shop where you guys can fit into a long-term play where you're calling high level, C-level people having strong conversations. Right? And personalization.
I mean, Amir, look, it's all about product market fit, whether you're an external resource as a BDR or an internal. Everybody wants to sell something cool that alleviates pain, makes life a lot easier.
Right. Tell you, I have a great friend. He was on one of our episodes called Transform Life. I went from being homeless to probably worth like $5 million. He's 27 years old. He's running an ERC program where basically they go after unclaimed money from the government and take a percentage of what they win. And they're doing $1 billion in revenue, right? But talk about product market fit. It's like, hey, if you had W-2 employees during the pandemic and you didn't get the ERC credit, we'll get it for you. So people fail to, forget he's doing awesome. Don't get me wrong. He's managing a big team, but you got a product where you're giving value to people, right?
Yeah.
I had 3 cold calls today, and they were all from dialing companies. They're like, hey, and the best part was the first thing they asked me every time was, how are you? And I literally, as soon as someone asked me how are you, I'm angry because I'm like, I really don't like small talk with strangers.
Yeah.
If I go, and they kept, what are you using for a calling this? And I'm like, thinking to myself, I'm like, man, you are literally competing against 1,000 callers, right? VoIP galore. And I'm like, I showed no signal, no interest, nothing. You're just going to cold call me and talk about my phone, and say, how are you? So it's not the same as, a product that actually clearly stands out. There's not 3,000 competitors, low barrier to entry, right? People fail to talk about that, right? I always give the analogy where, like, if you gave me 1,000 Porsche 911 Turbo S brand new models and told me I could sell them for $20K, I'll sell all 1,000 today with one email. You tell me it's $5 million, I'll probably sell 0. And I guess people are oftentimes afraid to look in the mirror at their own product and say, would I buy this, right? Sometimes they put you out on that D-Day mission that they know you're not coming back from, right?
Indeed.
And they would have marched that beach themselves. Tell me a little bit about mistakes that you've seen, right? And I want to focus in on mistakes that affect buyers from choosing the right agency, right? Because I'm not talking mistakes they make that like hurt your ability to convert them, but what mistakes do you see buyers are making during a selection process?
Of when they're going to select an outsource firm?
I'm ready to outsource. It's time to go find one, negotiate, and hire one. Is there a common mistake you've seen? It's okay if there isn't, but is there something you've seen that there's like a mistake you make where you're like, dear buyer, I wish you knew these things so that I could better serve you?
Yeah. There's 2 that really stand out. The first one is they don't ask to meet the team that's going to be supporting them. They kind of just go with the flow. They sign the agreement, they wire the money. And I'm a pretty good salesperson. I've closed more deals without having to introduce the team than I have. And the only time I've ever had to introduce the team is when I was in a serious competitive situation. And I said, pump the brakes for 1 second. Have you met the team of the other company you're considering going with? No, I haven't. Do me a favor. Go ask to meet the SDRs that are going to be supporting you. And then I'll let you meet the SDRs that are going to be supporting you here. And I usually win that deal because what's behind the curtain, most outsourced firms don't want to disclose or show.
It's the first time I heard that answer. And it's interesting. It's got me thinking, right? It's like, would you ever really, go to see a doctor or elect surgery by making a decision by meeting their front desk receptionist, right?
Correct.
Probably not, right? And
no.
And I think a lot of buyers, like, I didn't think about that. They're doing that, right? And like, they'll speak with you, Ryan. Like, Ryan, you're a sales guy. You're strong. You're a powerful, straightforward person that can definitely win confidence that you can carry and sell products. And then you yourself are like, come meet my team, right? Like, this is like, you're talking to me. I'm running the company. I'm not going to be cold calling for you. Wish I could, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you do, but that's interesting. So, and this is back to what makes you unique, right? The U.S. based, right? So I'm kind of tying tying the dots together that there's no weak link and everybody's presentable, everybody's strong, and that you're winning deals because you're a small boutique, U.S. based, everyone's educated, you handpick people, and that's a mistake you see buyers make, and that's your strength. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think you should make that part of your sales process. They have to meet the team.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 more, but the one that was a big lesson learned for me was when the buyer, when they become a customer, they want to control the lists of who we call, not the companies, the people, based on a specific trigger event. Hey, only call this list of newly anointed founders who just got Series A, and just stay in that lane. And then I go back and say, well, according to our statement of work, I've got a lot of meetings to book for you guys. If you keep me in this lane, you pigeonhole us, and I can't commit to what's in the statement of work now. 16, 20 meetings a month is a lot as it is. When you start talking about, hey, you can only call these people if they've raised Series A, that's not good. So I learned quickly that when they start to say, hey, we have the list, you call our list, do what we want you to do, I'll either A, walk away, or B, try to explain to them, that's not how we work. Like, we have to have a wide net. We have all the data under the sun. Once we know enough domain expertise and how to sell your products and who to sell them to, we need to be let free. If there's some named accounts that you don't want us going after, some tier ones and VIPs, no problem. Siphon those off. We're not going to touch those. But I don't sign deals anymore where people are just like, yeah, can you only call this list of 3,000 founders or 3,000 CFOs? That's the biggest take for us. If we can't control the data, I'm out.
So to recap, big mistake buyers make: hiring an expert and not letting them execute their expertise and setting them up for failure, right? Because it's different if they said, we have been calling these people and these are the results we're getting. Oftentimes it's an experiment, it's a guess, and you're getting locked into it. So it's almost like you're running an experiment that's not proven, and probably want the experimenter to use their expertise and not pigeonhole them, which makes lots of sense, right?
Yep.
So yeah, listen, buyers, if you're listening, I'm like, you're hearing it from a leader's mouth, right? These are things that are costing you pipeline and costing you money, right?
Big time.
And it's like if you're going to trust somebody, trust them fully, right? And like I said before, it's completely different, right? If they say call these Series A people and they've been doing it and they're the records, that's a different story maybe, but they usually don't, right? It's usually a hunch, and it's usually their gut instinct. It's not a proven campaign yet, right? So that's a big thing. What about mistakes that buyers make when they're actually now engaged with you? And I know that kind of was that question too, but that's kind of so anything else while working with you, that mistake on top of that, because that was kind of a working with question. Anything else besides from
while working with us, they panic early on, right? So we could tell them, listen, it's going to take us 2.5 weeks to warm up your email accounts, a couple weeks to gain some domain expertise, get our call strips, just get our house in order. I could put this on a slide and show them like the sequence of events, an actual onboarding timetable. Sounds great, looks amazing. By week 2, where are the meetings? What's going on? How many calls have you guys made? And I turn around and say, listen, I'm not going to be micromanaged. I'm going to proactively give you all the data you need. In fact, I could whitelist a dashboard right now and let you see all the activity that you could possibly want to look at. So it's the impatience early on and that panic that sets in combination with them listening to some of those early calls that we're having. We're not going to be perfect on the first 25 to 50 cold calls we make. We're just not. We're going to be pretty good, but not perfect. And when they're looking for perfection from an outside firm and they want it right away, it definitely causes a little bit of anxiety for them. And quite frankly, it causes anxiety for me because I can already see where this is going. I've been around long enough to know that if this person's set in their ways or this team is kind of going to, panicking already early on, we're going to have a problem. So I have to address that stuff right away.
Yeah.
And in a couple scenarios, I terminated contracts. They would listen to a recorded call, freak out, stop calling. That person said the wrong thing. Like, dude, we've been on the phone for 2 weeks.
It doesn't actually make any sense because all success in life is failure, right? Like everything, like light bulbs, like Thomas Edison 1,000 times to find out the real element. You pick the wrong element, it blows up, and he stopped. We got no light bulbs. So yeah, it's not really.
I agree. I mean, just like relax. Let us make some calls, cut our teeth, take some rejection. And what they don't realize is that we're actually calling like a lower buyer persona, not really like anyone who can really move mountains. We're kind of just practicing on people in the companies, and they don't get it. So they freak out.
This makes a lot of sense to me. I've seen this too before. We've heard this before, and anybody listening, we could dive deep. You want to ask more questions about why this is a problem? Ping me, ping Ryan. We'll go into it because it is. Do you think that it's a symptom of a lack of understanding of who's in the awareness, consideration, decision stage and sales in general? Or do you think it's because by the time they hire an outsourced sales agency, it's because they're behind on their pipeline and they're literally worried they're going to get fired? So now they've hired you in a spot of desperation. So everything needs to be fast. Like, what is it a symptom of? More or both, or neither?
Yep. My wife has a saying, Ryan, people come to you when it's too late.
Wife's smart.
Exactly what you just said. 9 out of 10 come to me when they've tried everything else. And now they're having that oh shit moment and they begin to panic.
Yeah.
And then I have to arrive like I'm some kind of god, and I'm going to save everything in 2 weeks when it really is going to take me about 30 to 60 days to really get the machine cranking and get some predictability and some flow. They always show up when it's too late, Amir, and that's really what you were just alluding to there. And part
It's
of
team
what we,
size. It's team size. So
yeah,
by the companies that over the years that hired us with 30, 40 SDRs have never fired us. And they had the commitment, they had the size, they had the product market fit. The guys who hire 1 to 2 SDRs, it's a sad thing to say it, but it's backwards. Like if you look at a map of contacts and how you know this more than anybody, you're actually supposed to have more reach and activity in the beginning and wind down to hit a pipeline. They tried doing it backwards with less, right? And it puts them in a bad place. So it's interesting because it's like, if you're going to hire a small team, you might want to hire 3 or 4 SEOs first and then ramp it down, because it's going to take more contacts in the beginning to fill a pipeline, not less. So it's kind of a backwards things to be. But I hope that buyers now become more educated. I think there's going to be a big shift in the SDR industry towards quality, right? And towards, I personally think that if you look at the explosion of tools like Gong and Chorus, companies should be focusing more, in my opinion, on AEs and closing rates, right? If you take a conversion rate from 15% to 30%, you basically doubled your output, right? And they don't do that. If you could just snap your fingers and kind of wish for something in this industry to change, what would that be? Is there something that like you just wake up every day and talk to your wife, have some coffee, and you're like, I wish this was different? It's on a wish list.
Well, I mean, man, that is like a loaded question that I could probably rattle off, 25 to 30 different things.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't do it on purpose.
I will say this, and I'm not going to cannibalize us by saying this. We support a lot of AEs who have never prospected in their life and refuse to do so. And they rely solely on us for their pipeline. And because they rely solely on us for their pipeline, that by default makes us responsible for their number, even though we're not. And that's a ton of pressure on us that we put on ourselves. But it's a head scratcher for us, because
you're offending the whole woke community. This is accountability, dude. You can't talk about this in America.
I know, but it is accountability, and you nailed it.
Get canceled.
They've tried to cancel me a few times already. It hasn't happened yet, so we'll see.
Can't talk about this stuff. Can't tell people that they have to be accountable for their whole lives, their whole pipeline.
I know. Well, dude, it's like the AEs, man. They want the 150 base, 300 OTE, and they want everything handed to them because they're quote unquote closers. That still remains true. I can't believe that old school I'm a closer, just get me in front of the right people and watch me dance still rings true.
It doesn't matter. Customer support reps.
They really are.
I worked at NetSuite and I closed the biggest deal in South America, in Miami. And let me tell you, I was nothing more than a customer support rep. They called me, publicly traded company. I got all these recognitions and awards and stuff like that. And I was like looking around. I was like, this is a joke. I was like, these guys never owned a business. I was like, this is customer support. We talk about it. Buyers are in control. Okay, we talk about buyers being in control of the buyer pipeline, not talking to sales reps until they're narrowed down to 3. We the stats are out there, which basically says that AEs are support reps. Yeah. And sales are made at the SDR level, but they don't compensate them that way. Kind of weird. I second your thing. You AEs that are listening out there, take accountability for your own pipeline and pick up the phone and see what people are doing and see the process instead of just complain. I'm like, you can complain. You get away with it for long. It's not going to get you that far.
I agree. I mean, I've always wanted to be the person who starts the initial relationship and grows it with that person. Like if I cold call you, then I'm going to be the one meeting with you. And that's why we do our best to show up to those. I think that's how we met. I know, man. I know. It's
do what you preach, wild. Ryan. This is weird. You're American?
I am. I am. But dude, the other part to it though, like the AE is like kind of like supports you, can bring like maybe 20, 30% of your number. But as an AE, I mean the SDR rather, as the AE, you can really crush your number if you just block out 5 hours a week to prospecting. It'll make a world of difference.
I'm not gonna lie, I looked bad for prospecting on NetSuite. So I think that works at some companies, but there was a weekly report that would be sent out every day to management, and I 10x or 20x calling and emailing. And then they came to me and they were like, it was really strange. They were like, you're really active, but you're not opening up. And obviously NetSuite's it's basically a brain transfer for companies, right? Like you buy NetSuite, it's an ERP when you want to go out public. And it made me look bad. So like, I agree with you, but I've also seen situations where it can make you look bad, especially in the Oracles, the Salesforces, sometimes status quo in the big company. So be aware of the company you work for, because sometimes you're like you're only given the bare minimum is the best you can get, right? And then other places require, so it's kind of tricky out there. But Ryan, this has been awesome. I think this is going to be the first of many conversations we have where we're going to be dropping some insightful stuff for the audiences. For anybody who wants to have a conversation with you, wants to pick your brain, wants to hire SalesGevity, how can they find you? What's the best way of connecting with you? And where are you at these days? Where are you living? LinkedIn?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, head over to salesgevity.co. Don't judge us for our artistic rendering, but more so the content that's on there and how we explain what we do. You can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Lallier, pretty straightforward, founder of SalesGevity. You can email me. I'm ryan@salesgevity.co.
Coming down to our event in Medellin in May or no?
Probably not.
Oh, God. I'm going to follow up with you on that one. Ryan, thank you for being here. And everybody who's checking in and listening to the Transform Sales Podcast, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Ryan, have a good day. Go snow back there. And
Thanks, Amir.
All right, man. Take care.
You too.
Bye.